All right. Well, let's kick it off. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. First of all, welcome to, my name is Greg Cangialosi. I'm the chairman and co-founder of Betamore. Been on this wild journey for almost 10 years, which you'll hear about shortly. And welcome to the Hohen Lithograph Building. This is our new home. Many of you may be familiar with Betamore. 1.0 was in Federal Hill, over at 1111 Lake Street. 2.0 was at City Garage and still is, and this is our new home. So tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about Betamore 3.0, and that's why we're all here, to get your input as well. I wanted to, first of all, just say this beautiful building was restored by my good friend Bill Striever and his amazing team at Cross Street Partners. Definitely take a look around. And I also want to thank Catherine Phillips for being a great partner and actually being the conduit to get Betamore to be landed here at Hohen to be our new home. So thank you for that. Thanks to all of you who made it out tonight. I know this week is really heavy being programmed, so thank you for coming. This is a good, well-represented group of folks from our local ecosystem. We've got some folks from university, private sector, public sector, entrepreneurs, future entrepreneurs, city. Again, the goal of today is to get your voices to be heard so we can incorporate it into our plans as we move forward into 3.0. Also want to thank Kimmy Angelonis. Where are you, Kimmy? There you are, taking photos. She's our managing director at Betamore, and thanks for organizing this event. And just, she works tirelessly to continue and advance the mission of Betamore as we work through the next phase. And thanks to our board of directors, your time, efforts, relentless support, a bunch of who are represented here tonight. The mission of supporting entrepreneurs in our city and our region. Thanks for all of your efforts and time and commitment to the organization. And thanks to the esteemed panel who's sitting here next to me tonight for making time for this. They'll introduce themselves shortly. So again, I'm going to go through the agenda. It's going to be really simple. Why are we here? What are we looking to accomplish? The goal of this evening is to gather feedback and input from all of you on what is still needed in the ecosystem here in Baltimore. A lot has changed. Particularly, I have a multi-decade view of the entrepreneurial ecosystem, which I'll talk about in a minute. To get your feedback to help guide us through the next phase of Betamore, which we're dubbing Betamore 3.0, as I mentioned. It's wild to think that right after the turn of the new year, we will be in our 10th year and celebrating our 10th anniversary. So what a great way to, what a great time to come back and come back strong. And like any entrepreneurial journey, there's been lots of twists and turns and ups and downs and all arounds through the last 9 years. So we've been undergoing a strategic planning process since the beginning of the summer of this year. We're now working to begin to operationalize our plan, and as such, we value everyone's time, interest, perspective, and participation. Betamore serves the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Baltimore, and so we wanted to ensure we had an opportunity to hear from everybody to get your thoughts, because as we evolve, we want to make sure we are as relevant as we possibly can be. Simple format tonight. I'm going to have each of the panelists briefly introduce themselves. Then I'll give a little more context into the journey Betamore has been on and where we're going. Then give each of our panelists, we'll discuss their views and their experiences. We'll do that for the first, say, 20 minutes or so, because I know we're starting late, and then we'll open it up to have a little bit more of a group dialogue. So why don't we just go down, maybe start with Michele and come down to Aaron, just maybe do a quick, brief intro. Michele's got a very special place in our heart at Betamore, and I'll tell you why in a minute.
Hi. Do I really need a microphone? Yeah. Okay. Nobody's ever accused me of being soft-spoken. I am Michele Whelley. I'm a business and economic development consultant, and for Betamore, I am a strategic consultant. As Greg said, the strategic plan has been done. We're trying to operationalize it, and hopefully you all will give us some input that's much needed, because we don't have the answers. We have a strategic vision. We know more about what we don't think we need in the ecosystem than what we do need in the ecosystem, and that's what you need to help us define. I am not a technologist. Is that even a word? True story. I was supposed to tape a report to a committee a board meeting. My co-chair of a committee, who is the CEO of a major corporation in Baltimore, we were going to Zoom record our board report because neither of us could attend the board meeting, and we couldn't figure out how to record it. So we decided we would just write it and send in the written report. As it turned out, I could attend, and you know exactly who I'm talking about, Colin. But that's not my role. My role is to figure out with you all and you all what's the role that Betamore can play that's of value to help create the strong, innovation-driven economy that we know this region has. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Wonderful. Hi, thank you. Good evening. My name is Ellington West. I am the CEO and co-founder of Synavi Labs. We are a medical device and software company that is harnessing the power of artificial intelligence to transform the way we detect, diagnose, and manage respiratory diseases. I co-founded the company back in 2017. We spun out of Johns Hopkins University, and we've been so lucky to be a part of this community as we have learned how to be a company. So I like to tell people I have a very rambunctious 5-year-old. That is my company, and it is a toddler, and it's temperamental and emotional, and we have our ups and we have our downs, but with great parents and a great tribe around us, I think that we're going to be really successful. So that's us in a bit of a nutshell. I don't know if you want me to go deeper or chat, or I'm not sure.
Great.
So. Okay, cool.
I got some questions for you.
All right, good.
Hey everybody, my name is Aaron Brooks. Sorry if you see my eyes wart a little bit or you see me getting a little bit tired. I literally just flew in from San Fran. But I am I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Mastermind. We're a digital engineering pipeline company where we ignite passion in technology and connect that passion to opportunity. So what does that mean? It means we train in tech, emerging technologies. We do corporate training. We do completely free training to the public. And we ultimately get those folks placed at organizations. And we also help organizations learn how to wield this technology to make the world a better place. I started my company back in 2019. I'm actually at a Hutch. Downtown Baltimore at a Fearless. I'm an engineer turned entrepreneur, so I love events like this because I get to hear from some cool folks who have had entrepreneurial spirits since they were born, and you know it's something that I learned how to implement. I'm still learning every day, and like you said, a rambunctious child is the perfect way to describe it. Very temperamental. And so it's fun. It's fun. I'm a little bit more in the infancy stage, a little bit newer of a company, but I'm having a really good time, and it's fun.
Thank you all, and I appreciate your time tonight. And I also just want to point out, Aaron and Elle are both on the board of directors of Betamore, and as Michele mentioned, she just joined our team as a strategic consultant to help us move forward. I see some new faces in the audience. I think I know a bunch of people, but I thought maybe just to start, and I promise I won't make it long and drawn out, but just tell you really quickly the story of sort of the how and why Betamore exists today and where the genesis of it came from. And it came from my experience as an entrepreneur in the city. Briefly, was born in New York City, grew up the Jersey Shore. I was an emergency medical technician when I was 16 as a cadet, and that's pretty much all I knew outside of trying to pass high school. But when I looked around for options in college, that's what led me down here in Baltimore. I came to UMBC to go to their emergency health services program. And when I went there, I got halfway through the program and realized the two pathways were EMT or paramedic or healthcare administrator. And I decided that's not what I wanted to do. So I got my degree in English, figuring I need to be able to read and write no matter what I did in life, and I'd figure the rest out as I went along. Graduated from UMBC and immediately started my first company, which was a music promotion company. I was a concert promoter, essentially, and I discovered how hard that business was. Bootstrapped, unfunded, in a very competitive market. Didn't really understand the industry, but hacked my way through it. Joined a company called 0 to 80, which was at the Emerging Technology Center, which is the city's incubator. Many of you know back in the time, it was at the American Can Company, another great project done by Bill. Back then it was Streeter Brothers. And I call that like a crash course in entrepreneurship. So I lasted about a year before, this was the dot-com, bomb, if you will. It was 2000, so I'm dating myself. And so I got the inspiration to start a company 2001 called Blue Sky Factory. Left 0 to 80, my co-founder and I started the business. Colin from the BDC is here tonight, I'm pointing you out because our seed funding was a $50,000 check from the BDC to build out a real estate database for mapping all the city's assets, which was our seed funding. And my first experience as an entrepreneur is to learn how fast $50,000 goes, which is crazy. So anyway, I was bootstrapped the company, could not raise, had no connections to capital, didn't know what I was doing. We had this check. We did the project. At one point in time, I was running around trying to sell 5% of my company for $25,000 to make payroll. White knuckle phase the whole time. But with tenacity and grit, we started to evolve the company into an email marketing company, which then was a nascent marketing channel for businesses. Eventually, 5 years in, turned it into a SaaS company, never raised $1 of capital, bootstrapped it the entire way. 2011, the industry was consolidating, sold the company, sat on the board of directors, and was asked to resign, which if you're an entrepreneur going 150 miles an hour for a decade, you find yourself twiddling your thumbs very quickly. Hence, the concept and idea of Betamore popped into my head when I asked myself this one fundamental question. You know, if I was going to do this all over again in Baltimore, what do I wish was here to support the entrepreneurial journey that I had been on? And so that was really the genesis of Betamore starting. It was like, at the time, there was only the hub, that was the ETC. If you guys remember, the Beehive was like the first co-working space that Dave Troy launched within the ETC. But we all felt that, and when I say we all, I connected with a guy named Sean Lane, who many of you may know. He's the CEO of a company called Olive Now that I work for. Sean had a very similar idea, and we had another third-party co-founder named Mike Brenner. We wanted to build another hub that was really focused on community, incubation of startups, and education, really, to get people the skills that kind of fill the gap between higher education and what the real world needs were of the companies that we're hiring today. And so that's what we did. We just thought that there needed to be more in the community. We can't expect the city to do it all. We were a for-profit company, it's been an interesting journey. So let me give you the quick Betamore 1.2 and then we'll get to where we are today. So we started Betamore in 2012, opened the campus in 2013 at 1111 Light Street. It was really focused into those three areas, designed by Kelly Ennis of the Verve Partnership into incubation, community, and education. So classrooms, co-working, and dedicated desk. It's been home to many great startups here in Baltimore. Zero Fox was literally the first guys that walked in. They just went public in August. Then when they walked in, they said they were going to go build a company and take it public. I love that. Reify Health, Be Well, Alaview. Again, co-working, a lot of community programming. We filled the place up. It was robust and thriving, but at the same time, we were for-profit, and we realized in order for Betamore to really fulfill its mission and realize its true potential, we should be a nonprofit organization, because we weren't doing this to get equity in companies. We were doing it really, the genesis was, and the passion behind it was to support the entrepreneurial community so more people could take that journey. So we shifted to a nonprofit because myself, a couple of our board members were on the board of the GBTC, the Greater Baltimore Technology Council, and that was quickly losing relevance while we were discovering we needed a nonprofit. So Tim Hodge, one of our board members, helped us engineer a merger with that, and then enter Michele Whelley circa 2014.
2014.
She had some time available for us and helped us get our first seed funding from Able Foundation, T. Rowe Price, France Merrick, and George Roach, and a few others who gave us the seed funding to really revamp, to kick off as a nonprofit. We hired Jen Meyer, many of you know, to be our executive director and CEO, and just started to really program big time. And then the fall of that year, we launched the Betamore Academy, which was our skills courses, both short and long form. At the time, we were also being recruited to open a second campus in City Garage, which is down in Port Covington now, Baltimore Peninsula, as you all saw this week. Bigger campus, leaned into more space, more programming, bigger events, convener of many partnerships for events, launched Beta City. Anybody? Beta City? Don't worry, it's coming back. which I miss. Then, of course, fast forward, COVID hits, March of 2020. Kimmy and I, we were literally booked in March of 2020 through October of that year. It was going to be our biggest year. So over the last couple of years, we've done like everybody else, have adjusted to COVID, kept the lights on. Since then, the building is sold, and we are here today. And we are ready to kind of turn the page and launch Betamore 3.0 to be a collaborator, connector, pathways, a pathway to opportunity and access, mentorship, and building a connection to some of the underserved communities of Baltimore as well. So that's sort of where we are. We've also, in the last, I would say, was it the last 6 months to 8 months, expanded our board, had Aaron and Ellington join, as well as Brad Myers from Capital One. So great to have you all participating, great fresh voices, great thoughts, and just insights, and thank you. So why don't we do this? I'm going to start letting the panel jump in. Again, today we just want to talk about a little bit of the entrepreneurial journey. You heard about mine, as brief as I could be. I can get a little wordy, so I wanted to maybe start with Ellington and just talk to us about Sonavi Labs. I'd love to hear about the journey. I've always been following it, so I kind of know, but for the
Well, it's been
audience.
a journey.
Yes, it has.
So, first of all, George actually made an awesome post today that was in celebration of National Entrepreneur Day. So I think it's awesome that we are all together. So many people who I know are hungry and excited about creating their own path and their own identity. And I think that as entrepreneurs, it takes grit, like you said, Greg, and resilience, because you have to get comfortable with no to get to yes. So when I co-founded the company back in 2017, I was formerly the director of sales for a national healthcare company, and I'm a first-time founder, so I had no idea what I was doing. What I did know was that we had a great technology, and that technology actually spun out of my dad's lab at Hopkins. So the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was, at the time, looking for a way to reduce infant mortality as it relates to pneumonia. There was one child under the age of 5 dying every 36 seconds from a detectable and treatable condition, and the team at Hopkins said, this doesn't make sense. There has to be a way to solve this problem. And the issue was, because we're thinking about this from an emerging market lens, right? So there were community health workers who would see these patients, but they didn't have the clinical expertise to make the call. So what the team was doing was recording sounds from the patient's lungs, so taking, think of a stethoscope, would take those recordings, send it back to the team at Hopkins. They would listen to the sound of those patients' lungs and then say, yep, sounds like pneumonia with all these other physiological concerns. But there was 72 hours in between that. And so the team thought, well, if physicians have stethoscopes and they're trained to listen for certain patterns, why can't we augment that process with AI? So we did. We developed Felix, which is the name of our device, that listens to the sound of your chest, analyzes those sounds, and then shares that data with care teams anywhere in the world. So I was like, wow, this is brilliant. We can save the world. You don't need an x-ray. You don't need a doctor. Everyone is going to want this. And the Gates Foundation supported us. So who's not going to buy it? No one. So it was like, okay, this is real. This is a crisis. So we said, okay, let's really think this through, and what is the strategy that we can build around this so that it makes sense? And also, we have no money, so we don't have a team and all of these things. So the very first program or opportunity or accelerator that I was smart enough to get my hands on was actually ETC. The very first $25,000 that we ever had. And with that, we immediately hired a market research firm, Observation Baltimore, right on UMBC's campus, Barbara Gasway, who was actually one of my former bosses. And we took the time and we said, look, what are the problems that we can uncover that are in our own backyard? And what we quickly realized was that children in Baltimore are 3 times more likely to die of an asthma attack than any other patient population. Specifically, we were looking at the disparities in African-American patients versus the rest of the world. And so for me, I said, this is in our own backyard. This is very real. What can we do when it comes to respiratory management in a real way? And this is pre-pandemic. So everyone's like, respiratory diseases, is it really that bad? And I'm like, okay, fine. I'm just ringing this bell. It is a crisis. No one believes me. And then all of a sudden there's COVID. So, okay, now you all believe me. So it was very interesting throughout this journey where I had to build a team. I had to, with no money, with passion, get people indoctrinated into this mission. And the first and most important thing for me in that was I had to believe it myself. I had to believe that we could make a change, that we could make a difference, that we could save lives, and most importantly, that I, as a leader, could do it. So that required like a lot of reading, a lot of YouTube, and a lot of friends. And so we got there, and we've raised about $6.5 million to date. And we've been so supported by so many organizations, so many folks. We have huge partners. Johnson & Johnson, J-Labs, they're doing an RSV trial with us. They've written us into their budget for next year, which is so exciting. We're working with Moderna, Hopkins. We have 6 pilots that are getting ready to kick off between Children's National and Children's Hospital of Orange County. And we've grown. We have 11 employees. We have an office here in Baltimore and an office in LA. But the reality is that there are so many unexpected things that happen along the way. And I can honestly say to you, if I knew then what I know now, I don't know if I would have done it, just because, we're in such a regulated space. And I like to make the analogy that it was almost like we were traversing Everest, but we had never climbed a mountain before. Or a hill even. So the most important thing that I did was bring on an amazing advisory board of folks who had been in devices, product, who had raised money, and who understood really not just what we were trying to accomplish, but they were also equally passionate about it. So the greatest tool that I had before I had capital was human capital, and I think that that's the most valuable thing and the most beautiful thing about Baltimore, because we have accessibility to folks in a very unique way. We always say it's small to more, but if you're an entrepreneur, it's honestly one of your best assets and one of our best assets. So,
Can I ask you, because the journey's been wild, and I've been watching it, and it's, no lack of effort on your part at all. But could you just talk a little bit about the ways that the Baltimore ecosystem has supported you throughout that, up to maybe where you're at today? 11 employees, millions of dollars raised.
Yeah. It's been an interesting relationship, actually, that I've had with Baltimore, and I think it's important that I'm super transparent. I think that when we first started, so it's been 5 years. So in the first 2 years, we had ETC, and that was great. And we were, it was small momentum, but good momentum, and it was important. But then I raised a lot of my capital outside of the city. And in the last 2 years, with Upsurge and Conscious Venture Labs, there were so many things and organizations that have come out of the woodworks in such a meaningful way that I can say that the last 2 years, you could feel the change in Baltimore. And I was speaking at an offsite for Microsoft a month ago, and they asked me, we were in Austin, and they said, how are you successful if you're in a city that isn't considered a tech hub? And I said, you know what? You have us completely misunderstood, because we are the next tech hub. It's all about branding and marketing. So Austin has a great marketing campaign, okay? We are just as capable, and we have the same resources. And for me, it was people. There was a call to action. I think that this city got ignited because we realized how much gold there really is within our walls. And through that, it's been like Brown Advisory, T. Rowe Price, Upsurge, Baltimore Development Corporation. I mean, it's everyone. And we're all sitting around looking at each other like, what else can we do and how can we do it better? So I think that through mentorship, like with Kristen Valdez at Be Well or Nick from Protennis, there's just so much, again, accessibility to folks where I can call Troy from Tedco and he's like, what do you need? Where are you? And for me, it might just be, hey, I'm really struggling and I need some guidance because I'm not sure what my CFO just gave me. Can someone help me really break this down, right? No problem. There are resources. So I think that we've created an ecosystem, I hate that word, but an ecosystem that is so perfectly mapped out that where we're now positioned as Betamore is, okay, well, what are now the gaps that we can fill because we've done such a good job of showing up with so many other resources as a city?
Thank you. Aaron, a totally different entrepreneurial experience. Let's talk about it a little bit. So I know you worked at Fearless with Delali, got motivated to do your own thing, went into the Hutch program with Stephanie and got through that, and then launched Mastermind. I would imagine the journey was a little bit different. It probably still is, or a lot different.
Yeah.
Talk to us about your experience so far in launching the business.
So I mean, I think the important part is I'm an engineer. Even to this day, like I'm an engineer at heart. Like that's what I do. And the reason I got into Hutch was because I was leaving Fearless, which felt wrong when I was leaving. I was leaving Fearless for new opportunities, and they met me with love and said, "Hey, I think there's more out there that you'd like to explore. We'd like to invite you to participate in this program." And the people who invited me, Delali, John Foster, I trust those guys more than anybody. They've helped me out personally in my life more than anybody else in this world besides my parents. And so I was like, I can't pass this up. Like I'll do it. I don't need to take this new opportunity. I'm just taking it because that's what engineers do. You move on to the next thing. And it was life changing. Hutch was life changing for me. Like I said, started Hutch 2019, and we started from zero. I had no business idea. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and they helped me discover what I wanted to do. We talked about our whys, and we talked about what our passions really were and what our values really were, and it led me to what I'm doing now. And so at the time, I was, after work, I'd leave and I ran the Baltimore Black Techies meetup, and I'd be there every week, and I helped run a few other tech meetups. And like, what was important to me was I like engineering. Engineering's cool, but the opportunities that it provided to me are what I was passionate about. Being able to help others find that your life can be, it can be different. This stuff's hard to find. It's hard to get into. It can be difficult to get into, but it's surprisingly accessible. And so that's kind of where I started. It was like, hey, take what you're interested in now, and let's start building from there. And so I just started doing some online trainings. And I was like, I'll literally just sell classes. That's how I was going to start. And I started doing some courses just to kind of feel it out, and it started to grow. And I started to see where some of the missing pieces were, because in my mind, as someone who hasn't been looking to start a business my whole life, I'm thinking you need a product. You need something revolutionary to be able to sell to people. You need something new. And teaching people tech, not new. Like this isn't, you can't make money going to be a teacher. My dad was a teacher for 30 years, and like that's, your mind doesn't lead you down that road. But what I started to see is you could combine a lot of the things that existed, the social media, social networks. This is a place where I feel like businesses are not utilizing well. I've got friends who have who have companies making really good money, who have 200 followers on the internet, and depending on your industry, that may or may not matter, but the value of a community, the value of that network. And so we started to kind of do a little bit of social hacking, and did a bunch of cool things. We went places that people usually don't go, like Reddit, to find the folks that would be interested in what we were offering. We built in a year's time span, we built a community up of over 11,000 engineers. We were doing courses. We were doing 3 courses at a time, streaming 6 days a week. We were doing these live on Twitch, which is a gaming platform, something that's a little bit revolutionary in the space. It's becoming more and more common now. But we were getting 1,000 engineers that would come through a training session per night. And so we once we left, we're like, okay, so we're building a community. This is good. How do we monetize this? Like this is cool. It's free. How do we start to monetize this? And we did it in a couple different ways. First, we started with simple partnerships between companies. Google would love for people to teach folks how to use their cloud product because they have the lowest market share. There's a ton of money there, and so we partnered with Google, and then we partnered with Amazon, and then there's Twitch ad revenue, and then there's other there's companies who want these engineers because it's super hard to hire. I've been on the hiring side, and everyone thinks there's a billion engineers out in the world. It was super difficult to find a decent mid-level developer in your area, and it's because the market's not saturated. People think it's super saturated. It's not saturated at all because this stuff takes a long time to get into, and it's intimidating for no reason. It's optics, it's branding, and so you got to get people to start to believe that they can do this thing, and so that's kind of what we started with. We started to be the coaches. We started to get people to believe that this could be for them. It could be a little bit different. And so we went past the intro classes. The intro classes are important. That's how you get people in the funnel. You want to cast a wide net, bring people in with the introductory classes, but we started to teach intermediate and advanced classes, and that is where the market is missing. That's where the market was wide open for intermediate and advanced courses. So, you teach, instead of teaching a boot camp, you teach, hey, let's learn about Kubernetes for the next 6 weeks. And so engineers who are looking to expand their career come along. They learn about Kubernetes for free. And while they're here, you say, hey, I'm hiring for these roles. You develop relationships with organizations, tell them you've got thousands of engineers coming through your program each week who would love to work at their companies. Companies are already paying. If you all don't know, engineers are so in demand, companies pay 20 to 35% of an engineer's 1 year salary for you to find them, just for you to find them. That's the finder's fee, that was eye-opening to me, and now I now understand why so many recruiters blow up my inbox, because you get someone hired who makes $100,000, you might get cut a check for $35,000. And so that's what we started to do, and it started to be super effective. We placed, at this point, we've placed a little over 100 people, and we haven't had to do traditional recruiting for a single person yet. Everyone has come through our community, and it's super exciting. Again, build the funnel. How do you cast the widest net? And so it's exciting. It's growing. And now we're just looking for ways to scale it. How do you make it bigger? My time has gotten super valuable to me now. I now understand how valuable time is, and I used to spend many hours a week the sole person doing the teaching. So I've started to build a team. I've had a team doing all kinds of things over the years. And I'm at the point where, me personally, that's what I'm doing now, learning how to build the proper team to really scale and build out what you're doing. And there's tons of resources that have helped me get to where I am now. And I think what's interesting about Baltimore and what I'm learning is that as someone who was so new to these things, as I was introduced to one resource, that one resource was able to expand my network exponentially to the other resources that were available in the network. And it is amazing how effective Baltimore has been at this. And I'm also super excited about what we can do here at Betamore to really enhance what's been beneficial for me. Because again, I'm still trying to learn how to use the resources are available. You got to use them properly. That's another thing that I'm working on. I'm learning about. But yeah, it's been a wild ride. We're super successful. We did get a seed funded by Fearless to get started. Started the company in 2019. I went full time in late 2020. And this year we're probably gonna miss our goal. We just missed out on the contract that we needed, but this was gonna be our first $1 million year. We're gonna be right under. We're gonna be like 975.
That's huge.
Gonna hurt. And so, it's exciting.
That's
exciting. Yep.
What a journey.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a pleasure watching you grow your business too. And I know there's first couple of key hires you were talking about, and delegating and trusting, and it's a process. It's a journey for sure. Yeah. Michele, I'm gonna get you in here too, because you've got a really interesting perspective. Michele worked at the BDC, ran the Downtown Partnership, most recently oversaw the...
I'm really old.
She's not.
But,
GBC and the EAGB merger, and we're so lucky to have her.
well, like you said, I've been around a long time in economic development, business and economic development, and I've been in and out of consulting. In between those gigs that he mentioned, I've been in consulting. My first consulting gig was 1998. And I was on retainer with Johns Hopkins Medicine, pre-EBDI, but talking about what was going to eventually become EBDI. And then from there, got a real job, then went back into consulting, got another real job, then went back into consulting. So here I am again. But in looking and listening to these two wonderfully energetic people, you might think, well, gee, they've had a long journey, but God, they're making it. So this is really great stuff. But I think you both mentioned there's a crowded arena now. There are a lot more people, a lot more organizations in this entrepreneur innovation arena. and it's hard to navigate the landscape. You know, what resources do you need? That's not as easy to define as you may think. And then where do you go for those resources? And how do you make the connections? As you said, Aaron, sometimes if you get that first connection, then it snowballs. But how do you get that first connection? And how are you sure that that's the right connection, for you? So one of the things that we've been looking at Betamore, and I really want you all to start weighing in on this, is just technology itself. We tend, I think a lot of people tend, and maybe it's an older generation that tends to think of technology companies in silos. You've got cyber companies, and you've got biotech companies, and you've got digital health companies, and you've got software engineers and developers. And I think what Betamore has done in the past, and what I think we need to continue to think about how we reinforce this, is that technology is horizontal. It's not vertical, because there's nothing that anybody does anymore that doesn't involve technology, no matter what industry it is. So that's one way of looking at how Betamore can fill a gap in the landscape out there, and that's just basically how we view technology. And what are the mainstream industries that Betamore can connect with in order to foster that spirit of innovation. But identifying the gap, I mean, one thing that Betamore doesn't want to do is what everybody else is doing, or what somebody else is doing if they're doing it well. So the first question is, what is the gap? And the second is, if there are players out there filling a role, but they don't have the capacity to fill it completely, or aren't as effective as they could be, is that a role for Betamore as well? And these are questions that we haven't answered yet. Once we figure out that value proposition, what space can Betamore claim to either own or be part of, then the next question, and you too will appreciate this, is what's the business model that supports that? Because you could have a great idea, and you can think you're doing great things and producing a lot of value, but if there's no business model that supports it, then you really haven't accomplished anything. So I'd be interested in hearing both from Aaron and Ellington again, but also from you all and your experience, as innovators and entrepreneurs, whether it's, exploring the technology itself or helping others explore the technology. What's missing? What would make your life easier if it existed?
Yeah, we want to hear from everybody now.
So I'm Angel St. Jean. I have a company called the Equity Brain Trust, and we started, like several others, in ETC. We went through Accelerate Baltimore, and it was thanks to Delali, who pushed me down this path. Going into Accelerate Baltimore, like you, Ellington, I had no idea. I didn't even know what an accelerator was when Delali said you should go through this accelerator. And since I've done this, I remember when we got in, my brother-in-law said, I can't wait to see where you are on the other side of this. And I couldn't picture it because I had no idea how I would become the next Mark Zuckerberg, which is what I had in my mind. I don't know why. But here I am, it's 2 years later, and, we're still alive. Yeah, that's in the arena.
That's big.
But people are coming to me now and saying, I have this idea of a business, and I don't know what to do. How do I? So they see me as a person who, you were doing all kind of amazing things, but you weren't the CEO of a tech startup, and you're doing that now. How did you do that? How did you take this idea and turn it into a company? And so I've found myself sitting down with people who have ideas and telling them about
not just Accelerate Baltimore, but what it did for me in terms of having zero foundation, understanding, and really helping me to understand how, I'm at a different stage now, and I'm going through Scale Up Maryland, and it's really sort of what Accelerate Baltimore was for me back then, which was just in time, like learning. I have this idea, I need to understand, go through customer discovery, I need to, do certain things to understand if there's a there for my business. And so I think that there's, something missing, and I think in two ways. One, it is, if I just have this idea, like, I don't know, do I want to invest my time applying for an accelerator, going through an accelerator? I have a 9-to-5 job, I have kids, I have whatever is going on. How do I take this idea and see if it's something that I should pursue? And then also, I know that people come to me because I'm Black. And they're like, you are somebody who I can relate to, who I think, we have similar, experiences, and I feel comfortable coming to you. And so I think there's, more than just, Black people that want to start, companies, but I think there's something about feeling like the people are approachable and accessible, to you. People have been great. As big as much as Delali is doing, I can call him right now. I can call Troy right now, just like you said. But everybody doesn't know that. Everybody doesn't know that you can, reach out. So how can you like provide like those two things, the early idea, what should I do, and how do I know it's accessible to me?
So that's almost like a concierge type function that, being able to direct somebody to the right resource, but not just saying, well, go to this website, click on this link and you'll find what you need. Because it sounds like the one-on-one kind of human interaction you're finding is very important. It's not just go to a website and you click on here and fill out a form and you get what you need.
Right. I'm telling them, okay, this guy I just met with on Monday, he wants to patent, his idea. So I'm telling him how I was at University of Maryland, their, clinic. This is, I paid $70. I have a patent pending, on my application. And you need a UI UX person to help you like envision like what your thing does, map out the workflow, create whatever. So I'm really giving them real, like, this is what I did, and I wouldn't have had no idea how to do that or where to start if I hadn't gone through, the experience myself.
So, so I think what I'm hearing is like, a lot of people have ideas, right? But people need an approachable, accessible way to get them validated through some sort of process or some sort of community or program that just, I got the idea. It just doesn't have any legs to it. Is there merit to it? Should I pursue it?
Yeah.
Good.
I'm super happy that you said that because, that I experience a very similar thing where I'm a Black guy in software, and everyone comes to me with their app idea. Everybody, every single person. Hey man, I have an app idea, and folks who are serious. But what I usually come out of the conversations with are exactly what you said. People usually need two sides of the coin. It's one, kind of a feasibility study of the company. Like, is this feasible? Is there a real business model here that I can actually use to make money going forward? Every idea is a good idea. Every idea is not a good idea to make money off of. And then the second part is it almost sounds like when you're talking about the UX, UI, people needing to know those things, almost like the second half is a product course or understanding. Aside, so it sounds like there's a business side of things. Like, is this a real business? And then I don't actually know how to build a product. And what do I need to learn about that? And that's usually what I walk away from my conversations with. It's like, man, I gotta teach you how to do both. And what are the resources that I can send you to do that? Which, there are some. but yeah, that's kind of
Mock up something that shows, what it's going to look like and how it's
Like a prototype.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that there are two important things that I definitely took away from that too, is that first, viability vetting, but then two, if we say, yes, this is a great company, we think it's a great idea based on like whatever experts we have that are helping us make that decision, it's then, I think, an audit of then the company to help you identify what it is that you need. Because that was something else, is that actually, Aaron, you said, is that it's one thing for resources to be available, it's another thing to understand what you need and how to ask for what you need. And there have been so many times in the beginning where I had huge opportunities, big meetings, and I'm sure they could have moved the needle significantly for me. And I was just like, I'm fine, everything's great, thank you. Because I just didn't know what I needed. So it's definitely a process. And I also think that prototypes and MVPs are really important too, because when you're raising money and you're getting to that point, you have to have something tangible. You have to have something that they can feel. So I think it's definitely vetting up front, understanding and auditing what those resources are, and then support and getting to that MVP, probably the top three. But I'd love to hear from you guys. Like that. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm just curious if anyone else. Sorry, Greg. I'm not the.
Please go.
This is not a question, actually. It's more of a comment. I'm not here as an entrepreneur. I'm here on behalf of Morgan State University, and we're getting into the program of entrepreneurship initiative. And I feel like I'm a little sponge that needs to be really inundated with information from a lot of different organizations to see how we as a university can be an incredible resource. I really appreciate being here tonight, Greg. Your journey is incredible. You guys are just amazing about what it took from the start to where you are today and where you're going to go in the future. And those are stories that are highly motivating to people thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, especially in the inner city of Baltimore, which is our focus, quite honestly. So not only Betamore, but anyone in this organization here tonight that would like to, I'd like to meet with them to get an understanding of where they are in the gap and what they're producing for it, so that we can be another resource, if you will, for the whole process.
Well, really understanding the resources out there is really important for the entrepreneurs, but also for the role that we think Betamore can play. But the other thing that you talked about, Angel, and then what you mentioned, Ellington, is that prototype. And how do you know that something is marketable? So, we've got the idea people and the technology people and the experimenters and those who are willing to take risks. And then we have this huge group of companies that we call mainstream corporate America. We have them in Baltimore. Some have innovation centers, most do not. So what is the role of those mainstream established companies in terms of connecting with the innovators, the entrepreneurs? And we know, well, I'm not an innovator, nor am I an entrepreneur. You all know that technology drives everything. So any company that's not paying attention to cutting edge technology is going to be left behind. And I would think that most corporations these days understand that. It's all bottom line. You need to know what's happening out there. So how do you connect, how do you make those connections between the corporations who need to either internally understand cutting edge technology that's going to help their business, or connect with the people on the outside that are in that cutting edge technology arena that they could partner with? How do you find those marriages? How do you make those marriages? And is it important?
Yes.
One thing that listening to Angel, if I heard her right, and we've spent some time together, so I think I understand. But there is this, I think what Angel might be talking about in some regard is that person who doesn't understand this process at all. They're not licensing technology, or they're not an engineer. They have a really neat idea to do something. Where can they go and feel safe that they'll get expert response and help to nurture it to some next level? They're not even close to going into an incubator. It's just an idea. that, and you think about how many of those ideas probably never materialize because they don't have that place to go, and kind of an idea depot or something, where people could feel safe and comfortable to come to a group of people who are experts or have experience and feel comfortable just talking about their idea and getting quality feedback and move them to the next level, or give them very good criticism that never going to happen, But I think that's part of what I think misses in our system. If you've already baked something, you're an engineer or you're a scientist, pathway's a little bit easier than just that person who has a really neat idea to do something different to help the community or help a particular population. So something like that could be pretty cool, to have a forum where they could come and feel very comfortable with people who have been there and done that to give them great feedback.
The other, because you mentioned this, Ellington, when we talked last week, all the pitch competitions that are out there, somebody wins the pitch competition. What about the ones who don't?
Oh, yeah.
So they've got a good idea, or they wouldn't have been accepted into the competition. So where do they go? Yep. What happens to the four great idea startup companies that didn't win the competition?
Sure.
Is anyone in the audience starting a business or about to start a business or thinking about starting a business? It's okay.
That's okay. You're still an entrepreneur. Tell us about it.
Absolutely.
So I have an impact investment real estate development firm. So our goal, thank you. Nicole Earl with, ooh, that's loud. Nicole Earl with Dominion Real Estate, and I'm an impact investment real estate development firm based here in Baltimore, Park Heights, and to be specific. And the goal, having come from an affordable housing and community development and finance background, is to redevelop communities that are low mod or blighted, and to bring needed amenities, services, job opportunities. Having been in the affordable housing space, my thesis is that putting affordable housing and low-income tax credit projects in already depressed neighborhoods is not going to turn it around. And having been in this space for a long time, I realized over the past 2 decades that I've been in it, most of the people who are in these types of developments don't ever get out of it. Their economic situation never really changes. We know all the symptoms of the things that are happening in the city, particularly with youth, the squeegee kids, the crime, the violence, but we can't just keep talking about it. So what I'm attempting to do in my own small drop in the ocean kind of way is to help to improve communities. So I'm starting with my own. I happen to live in Park Heights. I've been there and I want to stay there, but I'm tired of driving outside of Park Heights to get the things that I need. I walk around the neighborhood. I talk to the young men who are in my community, and they're hopeless, really. And they're hanging out on the corner in front of the stores and the gas stations, doing things they don't need to be doing, right? I remember this one kid that I saw, and he was talking to his friend, and he had a pendant with a kid's face on it. And so in front of the Save-A-Lot, there's a cop car, because there are cops, cars around the neighborhood, but literally just watching them do whatever they're doing. And he told me that he was in high school. He had just come back from jail. The kid in the picture was one of his friends who had died, and he was still doing stuff he wasn't supposed to be doing. So I said, "Aren't you afraid of going back to jail?" "No." "The cop is across the street. Aren't you?" He's not afraid. I said, "Why are you doing all this?" He's like, "Aren't you afraid of dying?" He's like, "No." I mean, so these are the stories. And I talk to the guys who do the things they're not supposed to be doing. I was my community president at one point. I talk to them. I give them respect. They respect me. I know them. But so the idea, like one of the projects that I'm starting with is a mixed-use project that's going to have housing combined with retail commercial on the first floor. And the second floor is going to have a recording multimedia podcast studio and a boxing and MMA studio to help, bring services in the community that I go outside for or don't come into the neighborhood. And second, the second floor to help the youth that are in the neighborhood. So clearly we're not downtown, so we're not going to command like high rent district kind of rent. And so that's why we're impact investment. That's why we're community development. So we started a for-profit side, but we realized that we need to be a nonprofit really, because we need to get some help to underwrite, because these kids, they're not going to be able to pay merit prices to come in and use our services. They need to be able to get it for free. And then we're tying in like community services for workforce development, teaching them the business side of recording and music industry, and working with other community and services. And we have health disparities that we're trying to deal with. So trying to use that center to have it be as one of our former mayors, a live, work, play, and, addressing issues. So, yeah. So I'm learning the business side as one of my mentors. I went through Innovation Work, so that is a good resource,
Right, yes.
really good organization. And they teamed me up with a mentor. They really found me a good mentor. I had one meeting with him, and in one call, he blew up like everything I was thinking. And so I'm learning too, because one of the things he said, you're thinking too corporate. So I'm trying to get out of the corporate and figure out how to build a business and build a profitable business. So the real estate ecosystem, I'm still learning that for like a startup, especially in the space I'm in. So.
Wow, congratulations. I mean, wow.
That's awesome.
What's the name of the nonprofit?
The company is called Dominion Real Estate, and the nonprofit side is Dominion Communities Corporation.
Awesome. It's the concept of community and your commitment to your community, which is so powerful. And you and Colin should definitely speak. See, this is a small Baltimore moment. This is good. But congratulations.
Colin. We know,
Oh,
we
cool.
know Colin. We know each
Old
other.
friends.
Yes, thank you. So any advice, I'm willing to learn.
Thanks for
I'm
sharing
a sponge
that.
too. Like the gentleman said, I'm a sponge. That's why I'm here.
It's like as we think about how Betamore, as we redefine who we are, I absolutely envision like that type of partnership within that community and in that space that you're creating for innovation and for support. It would be great to then pull George's idea in and say, who here has this wonderful idea that we need to vet? There has to be a way, and then tie it into Morgan. It's like we have all of the ingredients in this room to do really awesome, powerful things, and you've certainly inspired me. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Anybody else want to share their story or what they're thinking about as it relates to their journey?
Jimmy Thompson.
Thank you. I'm kind of here, I think by default. A friend of mine invited. She's a no-show. But
Thanks for
no. But I saw Ellington on the panel, and I've known her and know of her. So I'm very grateful to be here, and I've seen some people I haven't seen in a while. What struck me is just coming here today or this evening. I've met the gentleman from Morgan State, and we both talked about Pimlico, and Park Heights is where I grew up on Park Heights Avenue as a little child, and they have demolished the whole block from Woodland Avenue south. And somebody said, what's going to happen there? I said, I have no idea. So I just thought this was so great, but the term that came to my mind was like speed dating in some form or another. This is kind of like what you do. I met a gentleman over here, Rick. He is trying to start, he started his own business, and coming to places like this gives him an opportunity to talk about what he's doing and meet people. So my gut feeling was, you need to do more of this. I don't know what the solution is, but you said, what do you do? I met this other gentleman over here. I forget your name, but he's got a real neat idea, kind of like Ellington with your dad with the stethoscope. He's doing something where they can do something with kidneys and tell whether, and I don't know what he needs. But this seems to be the kind of place where if he had a moment to speak, he could say, here's where we are with our company, here's what we're looking for. So it's kind of more of these type of things and that's, again, I'm on the tail end. I'd like to get into more of a consulting role at this point. But you asked the perfect question, Michele. It was like, what do you do now? How many great ideas just, but for, evenings like this, it gives people like yourself and Rick the opportunity to maybe, meet some people. And that's all I've got. So thank you.
One of the pillars of everything that we've always programmed has been around, being the connective tissue in the ecosystem. I hate that word too, but in the community, not being duplicative, but really, especially when City Garage was powered up in 11/11. I mean, one of the things that we did with all the entrepreneurs was just sit down with them once a week casually and just, what's on your mind, Rick? How's your business going? What do you need? Who do you need to meet? And then facilitate the connection, right? But of course, in person, that's where the magic happens.
Yes, nothing's better than meeting people in person. I agree.
Well, we've talked about continuing these kinds of events, if you want to call it events. Talked to Bill Streever, you've heard is the owner, architect, builder of this neat project and many other neat projects across the city, about having regular meetups. Some being very topical, and others just come and have a drink, have some cheese and crackers or whatever. But getting people in a group together over and over and over again really has value. But I think part of that is, there was somebody I was speaking to earlier today. It was you. That what we're talking about is kind of small groups like this, maybe a little bit bigger than this. We'd hope there'd be a little bit more people here. But small groups where you really can talk to people, as opposed to the 200-person event, which they can be a lot of fun. And you come home and you've got a pocket full of cards, and then what? So that human contact that Angel, you talked about, not just in trying to help guide somebody who's got a great idea, but just in helping somebody connect, and then making sure that connection, unlike speed dating, that the connection sticks. That if you've connected with somebody that can help you, or that you have an interest in what they're doing, that there's a way to continue that connection going. And is that a potential role? It's time intensive and it's staff intensive, but is that a role that's really absent? Just having networking events in and of itself doesn't get you very far. But if it's focused and topical, and the ability that people can really sit and talk with each other, that's where you really make those connections. But do we have time for one more? The other question I wanted to ask everybody to think about.
And I have a question I want to ask.
And it's what Aaron was talking about, and that's the educational piece of it. We have some great programs that take cohorts in, for a period of months, or you just are graduating from one, the Goldman Sachs program. But is there a need for the type of programming that Aaron's doing, and that is, you have a skill, but you need to increase that skill. You need to be more comfortable in that skill. Or you've got employees that need to be upskilled because of a certain technology. And it's not, a 9-month class. It's going to be something much quicker. Maybe it's a couple nights, maybe it's a couple weeks or whatever. Is there a need for that kind of educational programming that isn't a huge time commitment, but that has value? Particularly for, as you said, Angel, you've got, you have a full-time job during the day, you've got kids, you've got a spouse, et cetera, et cetera. Thoughts?
I have thoughts. I would say 100% yes, specifically because I get approached all the time, folks asking the same questions that I learned through Hutch, like, hey, take me through this, or who do you know who can teach me these things? I get asked these very, very often, and I think people are hungry for. I'm learning that people are hungry for structured information. Like this information exists. Information about everything exists now, and you can, if you're savvy enough, you can go find it. But that doesn't make the information meaningful. And I think people are looking for organizations to be able to provide this information in a way that's not approachable in just a way that they're able to understand the content, but exactly what Angel said of hey, like, is this for me? Approachable in the fact of, like, how do you market it in a way? How do you show people that this is something that you can do? and this information is for you. I think is something I get all the time. It's like, hey, I don't even know why you thought to ask me, because you're asking me about something I don't even do well. But I think it's, again, that approachability of the information, the hunger for the information is there. It's there.
Okay. Did you want to say?
Oh, sorry, just something really quick.
Go ahead.
I think it's like the opt-in concept that I really like. So when I was growing and trying to figure things out, there were so many accelerators, but there is more demand than resources that we have right now, and also who has time for the 9-week program.
Right.
So if I'm trying to figure out how to structure my raise, or if I need to do a performa and I've never done one before, if I need to understand a cap table, I want there to be an offering, a programming of that's just like those 4 days. It's a 4-day session, but we're also creating community while we're there. You could come from any industry, but we both had the same question, so we're both at the same stage, and we're building community through that stage. And I really think that it's the agility of programming that could be really fun to explore.
I just feel like spending time with other co-founders, and you can ask them questions that are really, like you were talking earlier about contextualizing. Like right now, I'm trying to figure out how to put together a cap table. I have the book, the jargon, I don't understand it. Like, help me put it together. And there was Score. I tried Score. It wasn't really, that good. But I was looking for that kind of thing where I can just be like, this is, and I get that from other like people who've started companies.
Hey, I'm Delshan Baker. My company is Endeavor TBD. We're an operations firm for the socially vested. So we work with nonprofits, but also corporate better makers, social sec execs, and we go in and we ops them. So we put in fractional COOs, chief of staffs, administrative operators, but we also do projects, kickoff to close. Yes. So we're going into our 4th year, and what I've noticed is small business needs operators, operators need systems, systems need to be made better, and so we are in that niche. I am in the very exciting position where I am both actively asking what to do next in order to scale, but we've scaled pretty well, so we quadrupled over the last year-over-year, and we will double again probably this year.
Awesome.
Upsurge Baltimore is one of our clients, Ashoka, all kinds of people. Just in the last 4 weeks, like 6 folks have approached us for services. Yeah. 2 more, exactly, right? Because everybody needs operators.
You're
and we
onto
kinda,
something.
like low-key love it. But so in terms of needs, because I'm in a position where I'm trying to figure out how to scale, but now folks are also coming to me to ask how to scale, right? I think I need some curation, right? So we're talking about like these facilitated connections, like you're saying you're trying to do a cap table. You don't necessarily want to go to a class. You want to phone a friend about a cap table, right? Like, who do I talk to about what? I call George, hey, I have this question, like, help me out. So that kind of facilitated, very directed question and answer
I love
is
that
what I
term,
need.
curation. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
That is exactly what it is.
I love it.
Okay, so I wanted to just pick on Colin for a second. So we have the pleasure of having Colin Tarbert, who's the president and CEO of the Baltimore Development Corporation, the city's economic development agency. I have the pleasure of serving on his board as well. For those of you who don't know, the Emerging Technology Center is actually underneath the Baltimore Development Corporation as part of the city. And so I just wanted to let Colin share his thoughts on the role of maybe the city in this ecosystem / community, and how you've seen it evolve and maybe where it's going.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. So we oversee the ETC, which is kind of going through its own transition. So I came here as a sponge as well to kind of hear what people want and need as we kind of go through our own transition and strategic planning process post end of the year. And so when ETC, and Michele can give more of the history, but when ETC started, it started over on Key Highway for 1414, and then it moved to the Can Company, as was mentioned earlier, and then we moved it to 1 North Haven Street, And each one of those was actually almost like a real estate development catalyst. We brought all the entrepreneurs, and they brought all the activity, and now all of those projects are very successful. And so we're kind of thinking through, what's the next, is there a new location? Do we stay there? All these kind of things. So we don't have the answer. I wanted to kind of throw out just an example because BDC oversees everything from community development, economic development, all these different pieces. And so we were very involved with small business, and during COVID, of course, all the small businesses were getting crushed. And what came out of that crisis was, and this is sort of a question, although I may have a perspective on it, but one question is the ecosystem or the network or whatever you want to call it, the community. To me, it has grown. ETC used to be basically the only co-working space here, and now there's however many, 15 or more. And so the small business ecosystem was very much the same. There's a whole host of providers for small businesses that did different things. So some had a niche, some didn't, some were good, some were not so good. And so when COVID hit, most of these service providers, including ourselves, we all came together. It was really the Casey Foundation that led that. And they gave everyone a little bit of money, and they said, we want you all to work together to respond to these businesses. And what has come out of that is what's now called the BASE network, business assistance supporting equity. So it's very much focused on BIPOC-owned businesses. But that's become more formalized, and so BDC actually manages the BASE network. It's 16 different organizations. But what's unique is, in New York, they did this after 9/11, but what they did was they funded a bunch of the providers, and they put them on a website, and then they told the small business, here's the website, here's all the providers, figure out which one. What we did, which is a small little change, but it's been really impactful, is we all work on the same platform. So we're all on Airtable. We share all the same clients. Everybody goes into the same portal. We share everyone's information across all 16 organizations. All 16 organizations meet every week. BDC brings in extra resources if we can't do it. And so now it's basically, BDC times 16, right? Or all these organizations. So we have a lot more impact. And what's also happened is because we're working as one organization, even though it's 16 individual organizations, we've been able to get a lot of outside funding. So we've brought in funding for impact investing from California. We've brought in, and so I kind of just throw that out there because, the question would be is what about if all of these entrepreneurial organizations were working with the same client? And when they came in, you said, well, you're really maybe best for Upsurge, or you're maybe best for Hutch, and save everyone a lot of time instead of people going to 21. So I don't know how we do that because in my experience with the tech scene and the entrepreneurial scene, it's worse than herding cats. But if we could figure out how to get on the same page, I just feel like that's maybe what's missing. But so.
And just handing somebody a list of companies to contact or organizations to contact, it's.
Yeah, no, that's great input. And, we were talking about connector, conveyor. Yep. And, since I've been in the system, everybody claims to be that. And you can't be all things to all people. You fall miserably if you do that. So back to what Betamore could do and some ideas and things, what's missing out there or what could we focus on that really brings value to these entrepreneurs? Is it connecting to capital? Is it connecting to collaborators? Is it connecting to customers? All the above. In watching the ecosystem, I've been around a little bit too. We just don't do a real good job of eating what we make in this city. There are great products being developed and technologies being developed, and they're not being used here. Remember, we were talking about this, Ellington. The need of your product is right down the street, right? Talking about what you're doing in development. These are just examples, but I'm doing a lot of work with Wexford Science and Technology, commercial developer. They work with research universities. They built the biopark. They're looking for partners to expand their footprint into underrepresented communities. We're going to connect you with them, but that's the type of things that, where do we go? How do we focus? Where do we structure? And get these entrepreneurs in front of customers, collaborators, talent, whatever it might be, but you can't do it all. So I love what you're saying about how can we fit into that puzzle with real value add to the entrepreneur. So need to think hard about that.
You guys have curated on the base network all the good resources, which
Yeah.
is great.
And they're each different, so we can send, if we have a Hispanic business, LEDC's there, and they may be the logical partner, or vice versa. And so we've been able to kind of work together and share the business, so to speak. Most of them are nonprofits, so it may be different, but the concept is one that could be applicable.
Please.
I was just thinking about crowdfunding as far as at the local level. So what would be really nice is if we could have sort of a website, some sort of crowdfunding website for just Baltimore. And that could either be kind of like a Betamore sort of initiated project or like a city-led thing. But I think what it would do is it could be that, people who have an interest in Baltimore, who have capital also, and even kind of, more regular people who have a little bit of extra funds could just browse the page from time to time and see what companies are in Baltimore that need access to capital, that have new ideas, they're trying to get their companies going, or they're trying to get to the next stage and they're looking for capital. How can they kind of reach out just to within the community and see if they can get some traction from within the community? Because you have websites like you have Kickstarter and Crowdfunder and various other ones that are just the whole world. But those websites typically require like a certain amount of cash. You can't just jump on there and be on there. I think it's something like $20,000 or something like that to even get your stuff set up there. So if you had something that was more affordable or free, kind of as a service to the city, and it would help the city actually in the end, because then you'd have capital flowing into these companies that are going to help the city as they grow.
It's a really cool idea because, we've had the Baltimore Angels and we've had some funding groups, but when you think about, what it takes sometimes to get in front of them, what like their schedules look like, who's interested, are we doing a syndicated deal? But like if you just have the opportunity to say it's accessible to everyone, then I think that's, I'm just laughing because Greg and the Baltimore Angels, that was it. But I do love the Baltimore Angels.
Professional cat herding sometimes.
But the reality is here that that's a brilliant idea because, the laws have changed, right? What's expected from accredited investors now with crowdfunding is totally different. We're trying to democratize being involved and being investors. So I think it's a brilliant idea, and I think that someone here should start it. I don't know who, but the anesthesiologist in the back. No? Okay.
How are we doing on time?
It's 7:30, but can I ask one more? So somebody sent me a question.
Of course.
At the last minute, they couldn't be here before you wrap up. Maybe I'll point this question directly to Ellington and Aaron. They ask, do entrepreneurs find that it matters to their businesses, consumers, and investors if and how they are giving back to the community or to the planet in some way? Do they wish that they had made that a higher priority in how they had initially set up their business? It's a big question.
That is an intense question. So,
Just briefly.
yeah. I initially started as a social impact entrepreneur because we were focused on global health, and that was the most important thing to me. And that's where my passion is, that's where my heart is. But the reality is that if you are raising money and if you're focusing on powerful bottom line, you have to be able to do both, right? Like your passion has to be in alignment with your investors, and that's so important. So it should be that whatever is important to you should be important to the people that are investing in you, so that you have a unified mission. The reality is that that's not always going to be the case, and resources are often limited. And this is just like the raw, real, honest answer: is that for me, unfortunately, the giving back piece was trumped by the bottom line piece. But my long-term model, goal, and focus is how do I become successful to then ultimately fulfill that mission?
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, it's incredibly important to me, for sure. It was a part of our stipulations for being a part of Hutch. There's stipulations there about giving back, there are requirements about giving back, for sure. And I agree. There gets to be at the start of your business, most people feel like, you know, they want that to be a big part of their organization. When you talk about the bottom line, especially when you have investors, you can't always give back effectively unless your bottom line is correct. And I do think that's important to focus on. I think that you should always do your best to make giving back a core tenet of your business, make it a part of your values, build your company on those values. I think that'll ultimately make you a more successful company. But I do think it's okay. I think it's okay to understand that there might be times where you can't do as much as you'd like. Yeah, you can't do as much as you'd like, because that hurt me for a little while. It kind of hurt me that I wasn't doing as much as I wanted to do. Because you got to get the bottom line right.
You do, but one cool thing that we have learned is that there are so many ways as an organization that you can give back. So we're a respiratory company. So we partnered with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation here in Baltimore. Also, I'm asking you all for money. So there is something called the Breathmobile that was here in Baltimore, run by the University of Maryland, and the bus would go into communities that otherwise were not getting the care that they needed and offer breathing treatments and medication to them. But I learned in the last 8 months that the Breathmobile has been shut down because they need $45,000 to get a new generator. I think it's a generator, yeah. And so our company has made it a full commitment and full court press to help them raise and get that money. So this is a call to action to all y'all who have some. Please find me. But also, it's those things that we can do, right, that are in alignment with your mission, but they can also directly impact the community.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, well, thank you. It's 7:30. I wanted to keep you here too late. I really just want to say thank you to everybody for participating. It's been great to hear the feedback, the stories, the questions, the comments. Thank you very much to Michele, Ellington, and Aaron. Round of applause. We appreciate this. We've recorded this. We will watch this. We will consume this, and we'll bake all the feedback into our plans. So thanks for coming, everybody.